Years ago, a kingdom was raised from ashes, and to assure its survival, a royal offered his only heir, a young filly, to the colt of another king. A treaty was made, an alliance formed, and soon, when both younglings were of age, they were made to marry and unite the two kingdoms as one. The filly, though, had fallen in love with another male of the Forsaken Lands, and with the blessings of her cruel father, they planned to bring about the death of her groom. A month after the union, when both kingdoms were in her grasp, the Forsaken male arrived to challenge the greater Staphion, and by using darker means and dirty tricks, he was able to kill the true royal and claim both lands. Unknown to him, part of the grand Staphon still survived in the womb of the devious female in the form of a growing colt. She didn't tell him. Once it came to her knowledge, for on some level she loved the unborn colt and didn't want him to see him dead. The Forsaken one, once he was informed of the colt, was made to believe it was his, and thus he raised the colt as his heir. After his dark black colt was born, though, he was kept under a watchful eye, as it was found that the mare and the new king were unable to bring life to another heir. The colt was never told of the true king, was never told of the Staphion whom died at the claws of a Forsaken one.
I was young, very young, when it was found that I would never be able to share the weight of being heir with another of my dom's blood. From then I was kept under careful watch to assure no harm came to me. Of course, I was watched by servants and slaves, my mother unable to look at me without feeling rage as well as despair, and my father only appearing to train me to take his place in the future. As I grew up, though, and my markings and traits started to appear, I noticed my father looking at me with a slight suspicion every time his eyes fell upon me. Once, a few months after the gaze became more frequent, when I looked into the reflecting pool, I myself began to have doubts, yet I dashed them away. It was silly to wonder if I was the product of another match. After all, I was colt of my mother, and she was a loyal, warm-hearted creature, though I had only heard about that side and never had the chance to experience it. A year later, on the night of the blood moon, though, the night right before I came of age when I'd be allowed to challenge my father, I woke to find him rearing before me, his wings spread as his clawed hooves came crashing to the ground. I was barely able to roll to the side and escape the promise of death his hooves would surely bring. I was wondering why, hoping it was a nightmare, even when I realized it couldn't possibly be. I found the answer much later, after racing away from him and losing myself in one of the forsaken forests. My traits had developed nicely since that time by the reflecting pool, and some color had shown up on my own colthood black coat. It was neither that of my mother with her pearl white and blood-red hooves, or of my father's midnight black and russet. It was dark violet, an obscure cobalt that belonged to neither of their bloodlines. It confused me, but I hadn't thought much about it. Apparently my father had. I survived years alone in the forests and deserts that made up the Forsaken Lands, learning to fend for myself. During the first months, I'd stumble upon forsaken creatures, and they'd attack, hoping to gain the reward my father had offered for my capture. I miraculously managed to escape them all, something that helped much when I came to make a name for myself. Sikaran, they called me, Sik meaning dark-souled, with Koran meaning death. When I learned my mother had been killed for having hid the truth of me, I planned for revenge against the Staphion whom had ordered both our dooms. Yet it was not to be for some moons. During that time, I made a trip through the Sharded Mountains and met with an older Staphion who claimed to be my great-great-grandfather. He spoke of my real father and my mother, retelling to me many stories, tales, and legends, as well as all he knew of the truth. When he showed me an old pendant he claimed had belonged to my father, I realized he spoke truth, for it was an exact copy of the one my mother had worn around her graceful neck. He claimed it was my father's, and that now it would be mine. When I went back to the lands that by right belonged to me, I challenged the Forsaken One, and dealt with him in the same manner he had dealt with my father. I reveled the buried truth I revealed the buried truth to those of his, my kingdom. They themselves had forgotten my birth name as I had. Now I was Sicaran, and as so I remained as I ruled alone. No one ever challenged me, and when a colt appeared, lone and abandoned near my home, I took him in and raised him. He'd be my heir, for I myself would never willingly bring another of my line into existence. His name was Sycorax. His name, so like mine, meant dark-souled wraith.
Life is life, as death is death, and both you'll find in
hidden depths. Search and seek, and you'll uncover the secrets I hid once in an unknown staff heap.